Ladies and gentlemen, YouTubers around the world, welcome back to another Dune Awakened video. In this video, we are going to be showcasing a PvP build that I've been using lately, which I believe is like the most busted, overpowered thing in the game I've seen for PvP. It's incredibly powerful. You can just shred your enemies, delete players in duels. Basic premise is you're going to be combining the Attractor field with the Disruptor pistol, and combining these two together, you don't have to aim as well as you normally do with the Disruptor pistol, which is a huge blessing because it's very difficult to aim because of the delayed fire effect. Also, you can do more damage, and you can even, in many cases, single tap an enemy player's shield with the right talent spec, and I'll go over that and how that works in just a moment. But there's other ways, of course, that you can slow someone down. You can make sure that you land both the Attractor field on them and then your follow-up shots. The way I've been liking to do that is with the Disruptor blast. The Disruptor blast staggers enemies that come in close, so if somebody comes in and cripples you, you can then stagger them back and apply the Attractor field to them and then start popping off with your Disruptor pistol. Now, how do you one-shot a shield with this spec? First of all, you're going to need to get pretty much all the damage talents that you can: range damage, pistol damage. Stack everything up. You're going to need to have some techniques. You're going to need to have center of mass. You're going to need to have death from above. And if you have both of these with all the damage talents included, you're going to be able to one-shot a young Sparky MK6 while floating in the air. Now, can you one-shot a standard MK6 power pack? Yes and no. So the answer is, if you use energy capsule in combination with this, you will be able to one-shot the MK6. I don't really like using the energy capsule in PvP. It doesn't seem very viable. It just doesn't last very long. The cooldown's pretty long, and just activating it is also kind of difficult. It's just going to take up an ability slot, which we really can't afford, in my opinion. So I think just try to stick with one-shotting the young Sparky is the best way to do it. If you have to two-shot, that's fine. You can easily follow up a second shot and break the shield, but for the most part, it's really nice to get the one-shot, obviously. One more thing is you can't overkill a shield, meaning with one instance of damage with the Disruptor pistol, you won't, even if you're doing like an insane amount of damage multipliers with energy capsule, you won't do any damage to their health bar with that shot that breaks the shield. Once the shield is broken, the damage will stop until you do a next instance of damage. After you break their shield, I like to follow up with the Regis triple shot. If you land about 3 hits after breaking the shield, you should be able to knock down a player. Let's go over the talent build on how this works. So for starters, we obviously want full range damage, full center of mass. Those are the two most important things. You're also going to get some range damage from the Mentat tree, from your pistol damage, and your range damage right here. Max those out. There's also Disruptor damage. Now, I was confused a little bit on, does the Disruptor damage impact the pistol damage? Because it's a Disruptor pistol technically, or is it just for the SMG? How does all this work? I believe this is for the SMG. It's not going to affect your pistol, but I also use the SMG sometimes, so I have the talents for it. You don't necessarily need them. What I do recommend you get, if you go with the repeater rifle though, is also rifle damage. That's going to be incredibly important to finish someone off. And that's pretty much it. I mean, you need a lot of points at Trooper Tree here, obviously. We need to get the Attractor field. We need to get death from above. The techniques we're using are going to be center of mass, battle hardened, and death from above. There's some things you're going to be missing from this build the way I've set it up. Well, one of those things is going to be poise resist. We're not having any poise resist, which is kind of annoying. You're going to get staggered by rockets, by Shiga wires, by a lot of things. There's maybe a way to fit that in if you don't mind giving up the one-shot Disruptor, which I might test out later, but for now we're trying to do the one-shot, which has been pretty effective so far. It's a lot of players have been using the young Sparky because, last week in the deep desert, that was the drop. And it's obviously got a lot of power regen to it, so a lot of players are opting to pick that up over the traditional MK6 with 100 more power. Now, as far as other talents here, when the patch goes live, that's upcoming, and they're going to fix the repair glitch, you're definitely going to want to stack all your points into these talents, I would imagine. So I'll talk about what we can sacrifice here in a second, but we're going to go through each tree, finish everything off. I like to have a couple points in Dispenser efficiency because you'll be floating so much with this build. This build really shines when you're fighting outside on the rocks in infantry mode. If you're down in the dungeon, it's going to be a little bit different, and you might want to swap out some other abilities. For example, you could be using the gravity mine instead of your Dispenser blast to combo to get the shield on a player, because that'll slow them down, so you can almost guarantee that you can hit them with the Tractor field, The way Attractor field works when you try to aim it at someone is it has a slightly homing effect, and it's a projectile that fires. It doesn't necessarily guarantee that it will hit them if they're moving. If you miss, you can miss with this ability, so you might have to wait for it to come back up again. But one kind of interesting fact about the Attractor field is you can use it as a line of sight against enemy bullets. It will block bullets. If you stand inside of it, you won't be able to fire your weapon, but when you hit your enemy with it, they also won't be able to fire their weapon. So the great thing about it is not only do you have a much easier target to hit when you put this on them and do 20% more damage, it's also going to make it so they can't fire back at you while your shields are down and you're firing your gun. So that's perfect. Now, you're gonna also probably want points in this after the patch. Those are gonna help your armor and stuff. Probably less important than the other repair techniques, but we'll get to that. I'm using shield overcharge. That's probably the only prescient ability that I really always recommend getting. It's pretty important. Yeah, that's it. Here we have Assassin Shot. I've tested this out, guys. I wanted to see how much damage this would impact and if I could, one-shot shields even easier. It didn't really help. I think the thing is here is that if you shoot someone in the back while they have the Attractor field on them, it's just going to redirect to center of mass, and it's not necessarily going to count as a shot in the back. Now, I could be wrong about that, but from the damage testing I've done, it didn't seem to have much of an impact. This is more to help with your repeater rifle or whatever weapon you want to use to follow up your shots with. An alternative to using the repeater rifle is you could use the perforator shotgun. If you can get in close, you can definitely finish someone off whose shield is down very easily that way. I prefer the repeater rifle because obviously your opponent's probably going to be trying to run from you once their shield is down. They're going to be a little bit farther away. The rifle will definitely help with that, a lot more so than the shotgun can, right? Now, for the other trees, we're not doing much here. We're obviously maxing our power out here in the planetologist tree. Vehicle repair, obviously going to be more important after the patch. And then, of course, some bind do sprint. I also have a hybrid. I like to run hybrid and do some melee damage because, when I'm clearing out a dungeon, or if I just want to go in for melee fighting occasionally, it's nice to have. We've, of course, got our self-healing and our vitality, maximum health. Finally, in the Swordmaster tree, we've got max stamina here. Optimized hydration are the key abilities. Also picking up crippling strike. Always recommend doing that just to swap it in when you need it, if you need it. This isn't really a melee build, obviously. We're mostly focused on range, but occasionally we want to use melee abilities against certain builds, so I always recommend having some of those just to clear NPCs, if nothing else, right? So that's pretty much it, guys, for the build. Where you could cut back, I would say you definitely don't need energy capsule unless you're trying to one-shot the MK6 shield every time, but I don't think it's worth slotting an ability for that. Just go for the two-shot and get rid of this. We don't need, obviously, heavy weapon damage. You don't necessarily need disruptor damage. I think the pistol damage is going to be fine. That's all you really need. You can also cut back some points here. You don't need all 3 points. You could just get 1 or 2. You are going to need all these. I do recommend keeping battle hardened. Battle hardened only affects your cooldowns on your trooper build, but since you're using all trooper abilities here, in this case, it's really nice to have. Now, if you started slotting out other things besides the Dispenser Blast, such as the gravity mine or something else that you like, maybe you consider throwing out battle hardened. Assuming you're not level 191 like I am, you probably don't have as many skill points to use, so you could definitely cut back some points here. But I wouldn't recommend sacrificing pistol or ranged. Keep those maxed out. You could sacrifice rifle maybe, but I like to have that for the follow-up shots that I'm using in my build. Cut these all out. Those are not really useful. I definitely recommend keeping gravity mine. Always nice to have, of course. And then you want all these. Now, we can definitely take some sacrifices here. This is another tree that you can take stuff out of. You don't need the short blade damage necessarily, or long blade damage or anything like that. You could even take out some points here in the self-healing and the poison tolerance and sun tolerance. We obviously don't need that. That can be thrown out. And then, of course, here we can cut all this. I'll try to keep general conditioning and optimize hydration, but everything else here you don't really need. Now, as far as subbing techniques, an alternative to this build is I would, of course, like I mentioned before, have maximum poise as an alternative. Resistance, which is going to be this one here. You're going to need to max that out. That's just a passive, so no worries there. But you will also need Pranu Bindu Stability maxed out, which you'd sub in probably for Death from Above and just go for 2 shots on shields. You could also try this one. I'll swap out here, but since you're using all trooper abilities, probably you're not going to want to get rid of this, right? Like, this is really important. So it's really useful to max those out. And that's pretty much it, guys. I think I've covered every talent in the build. Now, you can see how easy it is to duel a player with this build. Having Dispenser Blast is a great ability for a variety of reasons, not even just for applying your Attractor field, but for blasting back multiple enemies. It can't be interrupted. It's just nice to give yourself some space when you need it, when you get in a tight spot, when someone cripples you. It really helps. Now, if you do get crippled, the problem is even after blasting this and applying your Attractor field, you're not going to be able to press spacebar and get in the air. So you are going to have to 2-tap a shield, even a Sparky, if that happens, because you're not going to be able to get into the air off the ground until your crippling wears off, right? So you will have to 2-shot anyways in that case. So in a lot of cases here, you're going to be 2-shotting shields. It's not always going to work out perfectly where you 1-shot. One tip I will give against better players when you're fighting them, they're going to be trying to dodge your Disruptor pistol shot. They're going to listen for the wind-up sound, and then they're going to either dodge or just run the other direction and try to get you to miss. What you can do is I recommend floating very close to the player, not close enough to where they can melee you, but pretty close to them so that you can almost guarantee the Disruptor shot. When you fire it, the ball will be bigger and closer to you. You'll be able to have a much larger target, and you'll be able to hit that shot. Once the shield goes down, of course, they're going to get staggered, and if you're lucky enough, the Attractor field will still even be on them, and you can swap to your repeater rifle, and you can just finish them off very quickly and easily. Anyways, that's pretty much it, guys. Shout out to the player on my server, KYO, who gave me the idea for this build. He kind of dominated me, as you'll see in the video. I took some of the ideas that he was utilizing to heart and tried to make a build where you can 1-shot the shield, and it has successfully worked in many cases. So hope you guys enjoyed the build, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.
God, dude. Wow.